Hi, welcome back to the Snipe Museum of Art. My name is Joe Becherer and I'm honored to serve as your director. Today I thought I'd say a little bit about sculpture and something that you might not necessarily think about in association with sculpture, movement. As you know, but I think it's important to state yet again, sculpture, especially sculpture in the round, like this piece here, a favorite at the museum, Nydia, the Blind Girl of Pompeii by Randolph Rogers, is with us. Sculpture in the round takes space, has volume, has mass, just like you, just like me. For centuries, sculptors have approached their work in stone, in wood, and in marble. It's solid, it's durable, and it's not intended to move. Let me take a step out of the way and give you an opportunity to fully appreciate this piece before we go outside and look at another version of movement. In this masterwork, Rogers is sharing with us a story from the ancient Roman world that was very popular in the 19th century about a young woman, blind, that wandered the streets of Pompeii. Yes, it's a story about the transformation of stone into something that replicates flesh and hair and cloth. But really, it's an essay about the illusion of movement. Take a good look at the sculpture. From head down through the back and into the feet, it is one giant arch. The artist is elegantly trying to portray a figure as if she is moving forward into space. But that's just a start. Take a look at the details, especially the details of her costume. Look at how Rogers has taken great pains to show the material moving backwards, arching, billowing in a gentle breeze. We know that physically this is a sedentary object, but the illusion is so masterfully done, at least for a few seconds, we can imagine her walking through the streets of Pompeii. Rogers takes something that's hard and durable, and some people might think formidable, like marble, and transforming it into something that looks as if it has life and life on the move. Rogers' masterpiece is from the 19th century, and he has pulled out all the stops in order to make us think about a form moving through space. But let's move forward to the 20th century and think about actual movement and forms that really do move through space. So we're here in the museum courtyard, one of the most wonderful places in the building, and a great place to experience outdoor sculpture. Behind me are two incredible masterpieces by George Rickey, one of the most important sculptors of the 20th century. At base, he is the preeminent figure of what we call kinetic sculpture, sculpture that's intended to move. If you think about what we saw upstairs in the building by Randolph Rogers and an essay in marble that creates the illusion of movement, here we have an artist that has actually mastered movement. George Rickey has an interesting connection to the city of South Bend and the University of Notre Dame. He was born here and lived here until he was about 6 years old when the family moved to Europe, where he spent most of his childhood and early adulthood. His earliest inclination and training was in the footsteps of his father and grandfather towards math and science. But he had the heart of an artist. Although he initially trained as a painter and worked as a painter and taught two-dimensional forms, it was during his service in the Second World War that he was exposed to the mechanics of what would drive his career and completely open the concept of what sculpture could be, sculpture on the move. Using industrial materials, learning how to bend and weld metal, working with ball bearings, he developed a foundation for what would become kinetic sculpture, sculpture on the move. By the 1950s, he had developed a system wherein his sculptures, geometric and metallic, could respond to the gentle breezes of the wind. Yes, they were brilliant abstractions, but they were abstractions that were set in motion. The earlier piece that we saw today is a three-dimensional form in space and always of a specific time. Ricky's pieces, by contrast, are yes composed of specific shapes, but those shapes change over time depending on the air. In this instance, if you think about the history of art, paintings and photographs and prints are two-dimensional. Sculptures like Randolph Rogers are three-dimensional. But with Ricky, yes, measurably they're three-dimensional. They also suggest the fourth dimension, movement through time and space. George Ricky's works were eagerly collected throughout the 20th century, and he quickly became one of the most important artists for public and private collections across the globe. Interestingly enough, he and artists like Alexander Calder, for example, were among the first to truly populate not just interior spaces, but exterior spaces as well. He had a brilliant mind, but also an incredibly robust work ethic, and left behind an important body of work. I mentioned earlier there was a deep connection to South Bend and to the University of Notre Dame. Here at the university, and specifically at the museum, we were the generous recipient of a large gift from Ricky's family. We have 116 sculptures in the permanent collection, and the university also has his archive. How fortunate we are to have one of the most important sculptors of all time so fully represented at the University of Notre Dame. This is an artist who's not just about forms, not just about forms in space, but about forms in space that move and change over time. If Nydia and Rogers represents the history of sculpture, sedentary, then Ricky represents the portal into the future of sculpture in an abstract language, but through forms that change and move in space. Thank you very much. Next time you're back here at the museum, take a good look in the atrium where we have 10 works on display, 2 more out in the sculpture garden, and, fortunately, a colossal piece in the Charles Hayes Sculpture Park. We hope to welcome you back soon. Take care.